I came across this couple online, Sophia and Ryan. They've been talking about exploring their relationship in new ways. They suggested something that I think could help us. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. What kind of thing? I hesitated, then plunged ahead. They suggested partner swapping. Just to shake things up. Bring some excitement back into our lives. Before we start, thank you for coming to my channel. Your participation is my happiness. Let me know where you are and what time it is now. Okay, now let's get into the story. The soft glow of my laptop screen illuminated the dimly lit living room as I scrolled through my social media feed. It was late, and the house was quiet except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator. My husband, Daniel, was already asleep upstairs, his soft snores drifting down the hallway. I, on the other hand, couldn't seem to shut off my mind. At 36, I felt like I was stuck in a loop: work, home, sleep, repeat. Our marriage, once vibrant and full of passion, had settled into a comfortable but predictable routine. Too predictable. I paused on a post from a couple I'd been following for a while, Sophia and Ryan. They were influencers, but not the typical kind. They didn't just post about their perfect lives. They shared raw, unfiltered moments. Lately, they'd been talking about something that had caught my attention: relationship exploration. At first, I thought it was just another buzzword. But the more I read, the more intrigued I became. They talked about breaking free from societal norms, about reigniting passion by stepping outside the box. And then one night they mentioned something that made my heart skip a beat: partner swapping. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Could this be the answer? Could this be what Daniel and I needed to shake things up? The idea was terrifying but also thrilling. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a moment, my mind racing. Was I really considering this? And more importantly, how would Daniel react? The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Daniel was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. He looked up and smiled when I walked in, but there was a distance in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. We'd been married for 11 years, and while we still loved each other, the spark had faded. We were more like partners in a business than lovers. "Morning," he said, his voice warm but distracted. "Morning," I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee. I hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Daniel, can we talk?" He looked up, his brow furrowing. "Sure. What's up?" I sat down across from him, my hands wrapped around the warm mug. "I've been thinking about us. About how things have been kind of stagnant lately." He nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Yeah, I've noticed that too. What are you thinking?" I took another deep breath, my heart pounding. I came across this couple online, Sophia and Ryan. They've been talking about exploring their relationship in new ways. They suggested something that I think could help us. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. What kind of thing? I hesitated, then plunged ahead. They suggested partner swapping. Just to shake things up. Bring some excitement back into our lives. The room fell silent. Daniel stared at me, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. For a moment I thought he might laugh or dismiss the idea outright. But instead, he set his cup down and leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Partner swapping?" he repeated slowly. "You're serious?" I nodded, my voice trembling slightly. "I know it sounds crazy, but I think it could be good for us. We don't have to do anything we're not comfortable with. We could just meet them, see how it feels. No pressure." Daniel was quiet for a long time, his eyes searching mine. I could see the wheels turning in his head, the mix of shock and curiosity. Finally he spoke. "Claire, this is a lot. I mean, I've heard of people doing this kind of thing, but I never thought we'd be the ones considering it." "I know," I said quickly, "and I'm not saying we have to go through with it. But what if it's exactly what we need? What if it helps us reconnect?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. This is really out there. But," he paused, then looked at me with a small smile. "I trust you. If you think this could help us, then I'm willing to meet them. No promises, though." Relief washed over me, mixed with a fresh wave of nerves. "Okay," I said softly. "We'll take it one step at a time." That night I lay in bed, my mind racing. The thought of meeting Sophia and Ryan, of potentially crossing a line I never thought I'd approach, was both terrifying and exhilarating. Who were they, really? What would they be like in person? And more importantly, what would happen when we crossed that line? I turned to look at Daniel, who was already asleep beside me. His face was calm, peaceful, as if he hadn't just agreed to something that could change our lives forever. I sighed, rolling over and closing my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. My thoughts kept drifting back to Sophia and Ryan, to the unknown, to the possibility of something new. And as I lay there, I couldn't shake the feeling that this night, this strange, thrilling idea, was about to change everything. The days leading up to the meeting with Sophia and Ryan were a blur of nerves and second-guessing. I found myself scrolling through their social media profiles more than usual, trying to get a sense of who they were beyond the carefully curated posts. They seemed confident, adventurous, and completely at ease with themselves, qualities I envied but wasn't sure I could match. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed surprisingly calm. He didn't bring up the topic much, but I could tell he was curious. Every now and then, I'd catch him glancing at me with a look that was equal parts apprehension and excitement. The night of the meeting arrived, and I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my outfit for what felt like the 100th time. I'd chosen something simple but elegant, a black dress that hugged my figure just enough to make me feel confident without trying too hard. Daniel walked in, already dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and dark jeans. He looked good, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the old spark between us. "You look amazing," he said, his voice soft but genuine. "Thanks," I replied, forcing a smile. "You don't look so bad yourself." He chuckled, but there was a tension in the air that neither of us could ignore. This wasn't just a casual dinner with friends. This was something else entirely. The drive to the restaurant was quiet, the hum of the car engine filling the silence. I stared out the window, my mind racing with questions. What if they didn't like us? What if we didn't like them? What if this whole thing was a huge mistake? "Claire," Daniel said suddenly, breaking the silence, "we don't have to do this if you're not ready. We can turn around right now." I turned to look at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. For a moment I considered it. We could go home, forget about Sophia and Ryan, and go back to our comfortable, predictable lives. But then I thought about the distance between us, the way we'd been drifting apart, and I knew I couldn't just walk away. "No," I said firmly. "I want to do this. I think we need to." He nodded, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "Okay, let's just take it one step at a time." When we arrived at the restaurant, Sophia and Ryan were already there, seated at a cozy corner table. They stood as we approached, and I was immediately struck by how different they looked in person. Sophia was tall and striking, with long dark hair and piercing green eyes. Ryan was equally impressive, with a muscular build and a confident smile that made my stomach flip. "Claire, Daniel, it's so great to finally meet you in person," Sophia said, her voice warm and inviting. She reached out to shake my hand, her grip firm but friendly. "Likewise," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We've been following your journey for a while now. It's inspiring." Ryan chuckled, his deep voice sending a shiver down my spine. "Well, we're all about breaking the mold. Life's too short to play it safe, right?" I nodded, though my heart was pounding. Daniel stepped in, shaking Ryan's hand with a firm grip. "Nice to meet you, man. Thanks for inviting us." As we sat down, the conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Sophia and Ryan were charming and engaging, and they had a way of making us feel at ease. They asked about our lives, our jobs, and our relationship, and I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't expected. It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't judging us, who understood the complexities of long-term relationships. But as the night went on, the tone of the conversation shifted. Sophia leaned in, her eyes locking with mine. "So Claire," she said, her voice low and intimate, "what are you hoping to get out of this? What are you looking for?" The question caught me off guard, and I hesitated for a moment. I don't know," I admitted. "I guess I'm just looking for something new. Something that makes me feel alive again." Sophia smiled, her gaze intense. "I get that. Sometimes, you have to step outside your comfort zone to find what you're missing." Ryan turned to Daniel, his expression equally serious. "And you, Daniel? What about you?" Daniel glanced at me, then back at Ryan. I think I'm here because I trust Claire. and because I want to see if this can help us reconnect. The air between us grew heavier, the unspoken tension palpable. Sophia reached across the table, her fingers brushing against mine. You know, she said softly, this doesn't have to be just about physical connection. It's about exploring new dynamics, new ways of relating to each other. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. This was it, the moment of truth. Were we really going to do this? Were we really going to cross that line? Daniel reached for my hand under the table, his grip firm but reassuring. Claire, he said, his voice steady. Whatever happens, we're in this together. I looked at him, then at Sophia and Ryan, and for the first time I felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't just about breaking the rules or chasing excitement. This was about us, about finding a way back to each other. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Let's see where this takes us. As we left the restaurant that night, the air between us felt charged with possibility. The night had changed something, shifted the dynamic in a way I couldn't fully understand yet. But one thing was certain, our lives were about to take a turn, and there was no going back. Thank you for listening to the story so far. Your encouragement means a lot to me. Please comment and share your thoughts here. I love you and I am so grateful to have you on this journey with me to explore the story further. The days after the dinner with Sophia and Ryan were a whirlwind of emotions. Daniel and I barely spoke about what had happened, but the tension between us was palpable. It was as if we were both waiting for the other to make the first move, to acknowledge the unspoken decision we had made that night. The idea of moving forward with the arrangement was both exhilarating and terrifying, and I found myself constantly second-guessing whether we were doing the right thing. Sophia and Ryan, however, didn't let us linger in uncertainty for long. A few days after the dinner, Sophia sent me a message. It was casual at first, just a friendly check-in, but it quickly turned into something more. So Claire, she wrote, how are you feeling after our dinner? I know it was a lot to take in, but I really felt a connection between all of us. What do you think? I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. How was I feeling? Excited? Nervous? Guilty? All of the above? I took a deep breath and typed back. I'm feeling a lot of things, but I think I'm ready to explore this further. Daniel and I talked and we're both on the same page. Her response came almost immediately. That's great to hear. Ryan and I were hoping you'd say that. How about we all get together this weekend? We can take things slow, see where the night takes us. I hesitated for a moment, then replied, okay, let's do it. The night of the meetup arrived, and I felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Daniel and I had agreed to keep an open mind, but neither of us knew what to expect. We arrived at Sophia and Ryan's apartment, a sleek modern space that felt both inviting and intimidating. The air was thick with anticipation as we stepped inside, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Sophia greeted us with a warm smile, her confidence putting me slightly at ease. I'm so glad you guys came, she said, her voice smooth and inviting. Let's just relax and see where the night takes us, okay? Ryan appeared behind her, his presence as commanding as ever. He clapped Daniel on the shoulder with a grin. Good to see you again, man. Let's grab a drink. We moved to the living room, where a bottle of wine was already open. The conversation started off light, but it didn't take long for the tone to shift. Sophia sat close to me on the couch, her leg brushing against mine as she leaned in to ask me questions about my life, my desires, my fears. Her gaze was intense, and I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't expected. Meanwhile, Daniel and Ryan were deep in conversation, their laughter filling the room. I glanced over at them, noticing how comfortable they seemed together. There was a chemistry there, a connection that was impossible to ignore. As the night went on, the atmosphere grew more charged. Sophia's hand found mine, her fingers intertwining with my own. You're so beautiful, Claire, she said softly, her voice sending a shiver down my spine. I can't stop thinking about you. I felt my breath catch in my throat, my heart racing. This was it, the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating. I looked over at Daniel, who was watching me with a mixture of curiosity and encouragement. He gave me a small nod as if to say it's okay. I'm here with you. Sophia leaned in closer, her lips brushing against my ear. Do you want this, Claire? She whispered. Do you want to see where this could go? I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I whispered back. I do. That was all the confirmation she needed. Her lips met mine in a kiss that was soft at first, then grew more intense. I felt a rush of emotions, guilt, excitement, desire, all swirling together in a way that left me breathless. I could hear Daniel and Ryan in the background, their voices low and intimate, but I couldn't focus on them. All I could think about was Sophia, the way she made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. When we finally pulled away, I was trembling. Sophia smiled at me, her eyes full of warmth and understanding. You're amazing, Claire, she said. Thank you for trusting me. I looked over at Daniel, who was now sitting close to Ryan, their bodies leaning into each other. There was a look in Daniel's eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. A spark of passion, of connection. It was both thrilling and unsettling to see him like this, but I knew we were in this together. Ryan turned to me, his gaze intense. Claire, he said, his voice low and smooth. This is about all of us. About exploring new connections, new ways of being together. Are you ready to take that step? I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. This was the moment of truth. Were we really going to do this? Were we really going to cross that line? I looked at Daniel, who gave me a small, reassuring smile. Whatever happens, he said, we're in this together. I nodded, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. I'm ready, I said, my voice steady. Let's do this. The rest of the night was a blur of sensations and emotions. We moved to the bedroom, the boundaries between us blurring as we explored new dynamics, new ways of connecting. The room was filled with soft whispers and gentle touches, the kind that made my skin tingle and my heart race. Sophia's hands were warm as they traced the curve of my shoulder, her touch sending shivers down my spine. I could feel Daniel's presence beside me, his hand resting on my waist, grounding me in the moment. Ryan's voice was low and soothing as he spoke to Daniel, their words blending into the background as the tension in the room grew. The air was thick with anticipation, every glance and touch charged with an energy that was impossible to ignore. I felt a mix of emotions, nervousness, excitement, and a deep sense of connection. As we all moved closer, the boundaries between us fading away. Sophia's lips brushed against my neck, her breath warm against my skin. You're incredible, Claire, she whispered, her voice sending a wave of warmth through me. Just let go. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to be fully present in the moment. Daniel's hand tightened around mine, his touch reassuring as we navigated this new territory together. The room was filled with soft laughter and quiet murmurs, the kind of intimacy that felt both foreign and familiar at the same time. As the night unfolded, I realized that this wasn't just about physical connection. It was about trust, about exploring new ways of being together. It was about breaking free from the routine and rediscovering the passion that had brought us together in the first place. When the night finally came to an end, I lay there, my body humming with a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Daniel was beside me, his hand resting on mine, while Sophia and Ryan were curled up together on the other side of the bed. The room was quiet, the air thick with the weight of what we had just experienced. I turned to Daniel, my heart full of emotions I couldn't quite name. Are you okay? I whispered. He nodded, his eyes soft but intense. Yeah. Are you? I thought about it for a moment, then smiled. Yeah, I think I am. As I closed my eyes, I realized that this night had changed something fundamental between us. We had crossed a threshold, stepped into the unknown, and there was no going back. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Hopeful that we could find our way back to each other. Hopeful that we could rediscover the passion that had brought us together in the first place. And as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held for us. Whatever it was, I knew we would face it together. The morning after was quiet, almost unnervingly so. I woke up to the soft sound of rain tapping against the window, the gray light filtering through the curtains. My body felt heavy, my mind still trying to process everything that had happened the night before. I turned my head slightly and saw Daniel lying beside me, his eyes closed, his breathing steady. For a moment I just watched him, trying to gauge how he was feeling. Was he as overwhelmed as I was? Did he regret what we had done? Sophia and Ryan were still asleep on the other side of the room, their bodies intertwined in a way that felt both intimate and distant. They looked so peaceful, so content, and for a brief moment I envied their ease. They had done this before, I reminded myself. This wasn't new territory for them. But for Daniel and me, it was uncharted waters, and I wasn't sure how to navigate them. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake anyone, and grabbed my robe from the floor. The cool air hit my skin as I stepped into the hallway, sending a shiver down my spine. I wrapped the robe tighter around me and made my way to the kitchen, my thoughts racing. The kitchen was sleek and modern, just like the rest of the apartment. I filled a glass with water and leaned against the counter, staring out the window at the rain-soaked city below. My mind kept replaying the events of the night: Sophia's touch, Daniel's reassuring presence, the way Ryan's voice had grounded me in the moment. It had been intense, overwhelming, and unlike anything I had ever experienced. But now, in the cold light of day, I couldn't help but wonder if we had made a mistake. Couldn't sleep. I turned sharply, my heart skipping a beat. Daniel was standing in the doorway, his hair tousled, his expression unreadable. He looked tired, but there was a softness in his eyes that made my chest tighten. "No," I admitted, setting the glass down. "I just needed some air." He nodded, stepping into the kitchen and leaning against the counter beside me. "Yeah, me too." We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "Claire, are you okay? I mean, really okay?" I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think so. But it's a lot to process. What about you?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know either. It was intense. But I don't regret it. I think it brought us closer in a way." I looked at him, surprised by his words. "Really? You feel that way?" He nodded, his gaze steady. "Yeah, I do. I mean, it was scary, and it's definitely not something I ever thought we'd do. But I think it helped us reconnect. And that's what we needed, right?" I felt a lump form in my throat, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "Yeah," I whispered. "That's what we needed." Daniel reached out, his hand brushing against mine. "Whatever happens next, Claire, we're in this together." "Okay." I nodded, squeezing his hand. "Okay." Later that morning, Sophia and Ryan joined us in the kitchen. They were both relaxed and cheerful, as if the night before had been just another evening for them. Sophia poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, her eyes scanning me with a knowing smile. "So," she said, her voice light but probing, "how are you two feeling this morning?" I exchanged a glance with Daniel, then shrugged. "It's a lot to process. But I think we're okay." Ryan chuckled, his deep voice filling the room. "That's normal. The first time is always the hardest. But you guys did great." "Really?" Sophia nodded in agreement. "You did. And I think it's important to talk about how you're feeling. Communication is key in situations like this." I hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. "I guess I'm just worried about what happens next. I mean, this was a big step for us, and I don't want it to change things between Daniel and me in a bad way." Sophia's expression softened, and she reached out to touch my arm. "I get that. But from what I saw last night, it brought you closer. And that's a good thing. Just take it one day at a time, okay?" I nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. "Okay." As the day went on, the four of us spent time together, talking and laughing as if the night before had been just another shared experience. But beneath the surface, I could feel the shift in the dynamic between us. There was a new level of intimacy, a deeper connection that hadn't been there before. And while it was still overwhelming, I realized that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. By the time Daniel and I left Sophia and Ryan's apartment that evening, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The night had been intense, and it had pushed us out of our comfort zones in ways I never could have imagined. But it had also brought Daniel and me closer, forcing us to confront the issues in our relationship and find new ways to connect. As we drove home, Daniel reached over and took my hand, his grip warm and reassuring. "Whatever happens next," he said, his voice steady, "we'll figure it out together." I smiled, feeling a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. "Yeah," I said softly. "Together." That night, as I lay in bed beside Daniel, I realized that this was just the beginning. We had crossed a threshold, stepped into the unknown, and there was no going back. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the right path. And whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them together. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of tension and excitement. Daniel and I had crossed a line, and there was no pretending it hadn't happened. But instead of pulling us apart, it seemed to bring us closer in ways I hadn't expected. We really talked about our feelings, our fears, and our desires. It was as if the experience had opened a door between us, one that had been closed for far too long. Sophia and Ryan stayed in touch, their messages a constant reminder of the night that had changed everything. They were supportive and understanding, never pushing us to do more than we were comfortable with. But there was an unspoken question hanging in the air. What now? Were we going to continue exploring this new dynamic? Or was it a one-time thing? Daniel and I didn't have an answer, at least not right away. We needed time to process, to figure out what this meant for us. But as the days turned into weeks, I found myself thinking about Sophia and Ryan more and more. The connection we had shared that night was unlike anything I had ever experienced, and part of me wanted to explore it further. One evening, as Daniel and I sat on the couch after dinner, I finally brought it up. "Do you ever think about that night?" I asked, my voice tentative. Daniel looked at me, his expression thoughtful. "Yeah," he admitted. "I do. A lot, actually." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and nervousness. "Me too. I've been thinking, maybe we should talk to Sophia and Ryan again, see where they're at with all of this." Daniel was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I think that's a good idea. But we need to be clear about what we want, Claire. We can't just dive into this without knowing where we stand." I agreed, and the next day I reached out to Sophia. Her response was immediate and enthusiastic. "We've been hoping you'd say that," she wrote. "Let's meet up. No pressure, just talk." We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, a neutral space where we could all feel comfortable. When Sophia and Ryan walked in, they looked as confident and relaxed as ever, their presence immediately putting me at ease. We ordered coffee and found a quiet corner to sit, the conversation flowing easily. "So," Sophia said, her eyes scanning me and Daniel with a knowing smile, "how have you two been since the last time we saw each other?" I glanced at Daniel, then back at Sophia. "We've been good. Really good, actually. It's been a lot to process, but I think it's brought us closer." Ryan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's great to hear. It's not always easy to navigate something like this, but it sounds like you're handling it well." Daniel leaned forward, his tone serious but open. "We've been talking a lot about what we want moving forward, and we think we'd like to explore this further. But we need to take it slow, you know? We're still figuring things out." Sophia smiled, her gaze warm and understanding. "That's completely fair. This is about you two first and foremost. We're here to support you, not to push you into anything you're not ready for." I felt a wave of relief at her words. "Thank you," I said softly. "That means a lot." Over the next few weeks, we began to see Sophia and Ryan more regularly. It started with casual meetups, dinners, drinks, even a weekend hike, but the connection between us continued to grow. There was an ease to our interactions, a sense of trust and understanding that made it feel natural to explore this new dynamic. One evening, as the four of us sat on Sophia and Ryan's balcony, watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Daniel's hand was in mine, his presence grounding me as we laughed and talked with Sophia and Ryan. It was a moment of pure connection, one that reminded me why we had taken this leap in the first place. Sophia turned to me, her eyes soft but intense. "You know, Claire," she said, her voice low and intimate, "this doesn't have to be just about physical connection. It's about exploring new ways of relating to each other, of finding joy and passion in unexpected places." I nodded, her words resonating deeply. "I know, and I think that's what we're starting to find." As the weeks turned into months, our relationship with Sophia and Ryan deepened. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, of jealousy, of fear, but we worked through them together. Communication became the cornerstone of our dynamic, and I found myself opening up in ways I never had before. Daniel and I grew closer, our bond stronger than ever. The experience had forced us to confront the issues in our relationship, to be honest with each other in ways we hadn't been in years. And while it wasn't always comfortable, it was necessary. We were rediscovering each other, and in the process rediscovering ourselves. One night, as we lay in bed together, Daniel turned to me, his eyes soft but intense. "Claire," he said, his voice steady, "I just want you to know. I'm really proud of us. Of how far we've come." I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Me too," I whispered. "I never thought we'd be here, but I'm glad we are." He reached out, his hand brushing against my cheek. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." "Okay." I nodded, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "Okay." As I drifted off to sleep that night, I realized that this was our new normal. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't always easy, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about us, about our future, and about the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Months had passed since that first night with Sophia and Ryan, and life had settled into a rhythm that felt both familiar and entirely new. Daniel and I had navigated the complexities of our evolving relationship with care and honesty, and the bond between us had grown stronger than ever. Our connection with Sophia and Ryan had deepened as well, becoming a meaningful part of our lives. It wasn't just about the physical connection anymore. It was about trust, communication, and the freedom to explore new ways of being together. One evening, the four of us gathered at our favorite spot, a cozy rooftop bar overlooking the city. The air was warm, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon. We sat around a small table, glasses of wine in hand, laughing and talking as if we'd known each other for years. And in a way we had. The journey we'd been on had brought us closer in ways I never could have imagined. Sophia leaned back in her chair, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "You know," she said, her voice soft but full of conviction, "I think we've all come a long way since that first dinner. It's been amazing to see how much you two have grown." I smiled, feeling a swell of gratitude. "We couldn't have done it without you guys. You've been so supportive, so understanding. It's meant everything to us." Ryan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's been a journey for all of us. But I think we've all learned something important about ourselves, about each other, and about what it means to really connect." Daniel reached for my hand under the table, his grip warm and reassuring. "I think we've all found something special here," he said, his voice steady. "And I'm grateful for that." As the night went on, the conversation turned to the future. We talked about our hopes, our dreams, and the possibilities that lay ahead. There was no pressure, no expectations, just an open and honest dialogue about where we wanted to go from here. Later that night, as Daniel and I walked home hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The city lights shimmered around us, casting a warm glow over the streets. I turned to Daniel, my heart full. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been if we hadn't taken that first step?" I asked, my voice soft. He smiled, his eyes reflecting the light. "All the time. But I don't regret it, Claire. Not for a second. This is where we were meant to be." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Me too. I'm so glad we took that leap." He stopped walking and turned to face me, his hands resting on my shoulders. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." "Okay." I smiled, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "Okay." As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I realized that this was just the beginning. Our journey wasn't over. It was evolving, growing, and taking us to places we never could have imagined. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for whatever came next. Ready to embrace the unknown, to explore new possibilities, and to continue building a life filled with love, trust, and connection. And as I looked up at Daniel, his eyes filled with warmth and promise, I knew that we were exactly where we were meant to be. Together. And that's it for today's story. I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment below and share your feelings. Did you relate to any of the characters? Or if you were in their shoes, what decisions would you make? I'd love to hear from all of you. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't, hit one. Subscribe so you don't miss out on more great content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.